Welcome back for another Drawing in the Dark. My name's Levi Smith. We're just going to get right into it. Today, I had this idea. I wanted to draw the Joker. I had some ideas about trying to capture a more chaotic, anarchistic kind of element to him. Going, with a little bit of the dark and creepy theme a bit. And absolutely, trying to stick to something that was definitely more on the crazier vibe. So, I'm of course, I'll do a little bit of play-by-play here as far as like how the drawing goes. I worked out a real general kind of concept for the pose, and even though this is a big pen, I draw really light here at first, working out, defining, finding the different parts of the body, playing around with this pose. One of the things I'm thinking about for future drawing videos like this is to work out a little bit of thumbnail sketching ahead of time and then have a better conceptual idea of where to go once I do actually start drawing this version. So, one of the things, with this is I just kind of like visualized a pose and then went with it. As I went, I was like, maybe I could have done a little bit something different. Maybe I could have planned this out a little bit better, got into layering some more features and stuff and elements into the piece than I actually managed to do this time around. But, it turned out pretty good. One of the things I really like about the Joker is like his whole anarchist kind of vibe. And that's definitely a string through most of the iterations of the Joker. Yeah, one of the things that's interesting to me about villains like the Joker and say like Deadpool and Venom and there's a chaoticness to them that actually is one of those things that makes them, in my mind, more dangerous and more interesting as like villainous characters versus Apocalypse or Thanos or Magneto. And one of the things, especially with modern tropes and stuff about villains, is that whole angle of identifiability, right? You gotta almost kind of like agree with their pain while you disagree with their behavior kind of element, because that's one of the things that really does connect people to the villain. But I don't feel always that the villain should be that you should be able to connect with the villain. I think to a large degree the villain should just be flat out wrong, crazy, unhinged. There are factors, in these types of stylized, literally comic book villains that I think should remain comic book. That there should be an angle that's kind of ridiculous and absurd with them. That's one of the things that I really, I mentioned it before, that I really do like about comic books as a medium, and the storytelling tropes that are typically associated with comics is that you can do things that that wouldn't make sense in a live action movie, that wouldn't make sense, or at least wouldn't be as nuanced, in an animation, in a way like how, like as far as like going like into tiers, as far as like depth of storytelling, you've got a novel, and then you've got a comic book, and then you've got animation, and then you've got live action. And a lot of it is that train, the more people you involve in the production of the piece, the more diluted it gets, and the more expensive it gets, so the more boiled down it has to be. Where a novel can meander, a comic book can be gratuitous, where an animation, And frankly, like an animation to a degree has to be way more efficient than even live action, where everything's got to be storyboarded. You're not really just shooting. You can't do 30 takes or 5 takes of a scene. You work out the scene in storyboards and conceptualization, and then you develop the animation for the scene, and then that's it. Maybe you're doing a little bit of back and forth if you particularly have a voice talent that's spontaneous, or you want to give them as many opportunities and stuff to give like natural dialogue, in a sense that you want to do that before you like animate the gestures and the mouths and stuff like that, just so that you get everything lined up. But I've really enjoyed Villains. I mean, to a large degree, you do get a lot more opportunity for creativity with the villains. The villains is where you can take far more risks as far as like characterization, approach. To me, characters like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, they're very archetypical, and they should be. And they should be, those archetypes should be kind of like held to, I think. Even though like as we may grow out of them, there's other people that are still using them as these archetypical scaffoldings and stuff to to develop with, to get to grow out of them, as as we have, as far as like an older audience goes. And so I don't like seeing a lot of evolution in Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, but the evolution in the villains is where there's quite a bit more room, because the villains really do have to kind of stay relevant in the harm that they represent, so that you can see these approaches of these heroes and stuff and their methods. That's where the contrast comes from. That's the concept with with good guys versus bad guys kind of tropes. You don't get to stay a good guy if you don't stick to the good guy rules. And so it's not easy to be a good guy. Where the bad guy, there is no rules. There's all the shortcuts. There's a whole range of morality that a bad guy can have. Because, you could have a bad guy that's really, really moral, or won't do this, won't do that. The gray area of what kind of crimes that they'll commit. But for the good guys, it's black and white. The villains are the gray, in a sense. You have, these villains like the Joker. The Joker's never really had any powers. He's just insane. I mean, he really represents the dangers of chaos, and he tests that odd representation of moral order that the Batman's trying to preserve, in a sense, but doing it just barely on the side of the villains, where his motive is to use fear as a tool to instill a deterrence, I guess, in his adversaries, which can't scare the Joker. There's that fan theory that that the Joker is actually Bruce Wayne's brother. I can't remember the name of the character intentionally, but that Bruce Wayne doesn't know it, and that the Joker does, and that's the joke for the Joker. I always thought that was a cool angle on that. That was always cool. But yeah, this piece is kind of coming along. I looked at a lot of different reference elements and stuff, so that I didn't want to have a Joker that was too derivative, but was obviously the Joker. I looked at, Cesar Romero, of course, Heath Ledger, Jack Nicholson, Jared Leto, Joaquin Phoenix. There's been a lot of iterations of the Joker, even the animated versions and some comic book versions, some comic book interpretations of the Joker, just so I could have a solid view of what the Joker, is now and has been before. If I can only just keep my whole sketchbook in the frame, that'd be great. But yeah, this is coming along. One of the things that you can see is kind of how I'll rough things out, and then I will go in and then, work them up and develop them and detail them and stuff. I do like to kind of plot and plan elements before I commit to them. That way I can, as I'm going here, make some decisions and stuff that still create an interesting balance to the piece. Something that's not just it's totally static, in the same old just standing figure with, whatever character dressing ends up on them. Because that can be how a lot of these figures go. I'll draw like a blank figure and then figure out, oh, okay, this one looks like Spider-Man, this one looks like Batman, this one looks like, Venom or something. And then there are those times when it's just flat out, I'm going to draw Batman, I'm going to draw, and then try to think of like, well, how does Batman stand kind of thing. Yeah, this one, as I build it up, as I play with some lighting and stuff, trying to think of some kind of like weird, creepy element to incorporate with him. The tentacles is just a gimme, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I think he turned out pretty good, I've thought about possibly coloring this one, busting out some of these markers and these watercolors and stuff. If I do, I might do that as, well, clearly it's not going to be in this video. If I do, I'll make a video of it though. As we're wrapping up here with this bit, as you can see, I'm just going in now and I'm just trying to darken things up. One of the things as far as like this ballpoint pen work, it tends to look a little washed out in some of the photos I've been doing. So I've been thinking about trying to, balance them digitally, not really modifying them to like improve anything other than just trying to bring out some of the visual contrast, really, that the piece has in real life versus what ends up coming through, especially in like the still photos and stuff. I post on Instagram and it's like, man, this just looks too damn washed out. I'm not liking it. It doesn't really communicate what I did. I did get some white gel pens, and as a little experiment on this, I decided to see how those would work. They don't. At least not with the ballpoint pen and stuff. Or maybe I got ones with too fine of a point, and that might be a thing. But they did not work out well on this at all. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up this drawing, fuss over a couple of things here and there. Yeah, I mean, if you got this far, thank you so much. I'm just gonna keep making a lot more of these videos, try to get better at making them, and then see how all that works out. Maybe I can build something of an audience with all of you poor bastards. But yeah, don't forget to do the whole like and subscribe. The Patreon is patreon.com/mopandbucket. We've got a podcast. It is called Pop Culture Classics, as the end card here will tell you. I also made a whole bunch of books, activity books, coloring book, a comic book kind of planner workbook. It's all on Amazon. The links are in the description. And then, yeah, so we did this Joker piece with the tentacles. I think it turned out all right. And thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll check you out in the next one. Later.